Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series on a Thursday, not a Friday, because as you can tell from my background, I'm not where I would usually be. In fact, I'm in Bristol currently, in one of those classic British holiday inns, travel lodges, Premier Inns. I mean, there are many available. I won't give financial credit and backing to any of them. But what you may notice about these British holiday inns is that the lighting is dreadful, absolutely awful. In fact, you can barely see me. I'm bathed in some kind of dull yellow glow from a terrible light. There is a light in the background, also terrible. This is as light as it gets in this room. It is awful. And that's why I didn't name the specific company, because, you know, I'm not going to be that mean, but it's pretty bad. Speaking of bad, Arsenal's transfer window so far has obviously got off to a stuttery start, and we've done some business. Ben White has, of course, come in. Sambi Lokonga. Nuno Tavares has also joined us, but there is a lot of positions that still need tending to, and also there is the fact that the Premier League is now less than, well, tomorrow it's a week away from our first game. So we've got a lot of stuff still to do, and there isn't much time to do it. And so I wanted to ask the question whether or not our technical director, Edu, is, in fact, doing a good job. And to answer that question, I thought it'd be a good idea to open the floor up over the next 30 minutes or so. So if you have a view on this and you've got some spare time, drop us a DM on Twitter and maybe we'll get you to jump on and have your say on this. We'll get some thoughts and feelings, of course, in the chat box too. So don't be afraid to share those thoughts and feelings in the chat box, because we're going to go through plenty. Let me give you kind of my feeling about this situation. My feeling is very much one of, I think he's doing okay. I think he's doing an okay job right now. When we consider, you look back over the whole tenure, of course, he joined us back, I think it was in 2019. Raul Senye, he was still very much a presence at the club, and very much the main kind of protagonist in the decision making at that kind of transfer executive level. It wasn't until 2020 and the thralls of the pandemic, in which Raul Senye, he left, and Edu became kind of the main man. And during Edu's tenure, where he's had full control, he has had to deal with the situation of the pandemic, as has every single club, of course. For Arsenal, it is different, and for not all clubs, it is the same. You find some clubs have owners that back. You have some clubs that are very financially well off because they've recruited well and they've sold even better. Leicester and Liverpool come into mind. And, of course, we have to think about the fact that there are clubs out there that have no resources and have even less of a better kind of situation than Arsenal. So I feel that Edu's done an okay job with the period of time that he's been here. I don't think it's been amazing, but I think it's been pretty good, actually. I think from the contracts that we've signed, the players that we've brought in, 80% of them anyway, have been pretty good. And I think there's a lot of work that needed to be done when he came in. But I want to get kind of your thoughts in the chat box as well. This show, if you are tuning in tomorrow or you're catching up, does fall in line with a pretty big footballing story, which I'd love to talk about specifically, but this is an Arsenal channel. And if Edu was to manage to pull out of the bag a Lionel Messi free transfer, I think for a lot of people that may end up changing their minds on him, possibly. But it's one that we're going to follow intently, despite it having, most likely anyway, nothing to do with Arsenal whatsoever. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat box. Rampur says, I think he is doing an adequate job. It's just frustrating for me as a fan how slow we are with transfers and announcing signings. Now, why is it, Rampur? And I'm going to question you guys. So when you throw these points in, I'm going to question you as to your points. Why do you think it is we're slow? Because people say that we're slow, and that's kind of, it's a statement. It's something that people believe maybe is a fact, that Arsenal are slow at doing their business. I want to know why you think we're slow. Why are Arsenal slow at doing transfers? That's what I want to know. Alex says, I'm 50-50, beginning to believe that he underestimated the size of the challenge he was left with. Alex, what's the indication to you that it is 50-50? Why do you think? What evidence is there to suggest that he has underestimated the size of the challenge that he was left with? I don't think he has, because I think that the period of time that he's had full control in his position is not long enough to deal with the challenge that's on the table. And actually, the amount of contracts we've signed, the players we've brought in, not all of them have been good, but actually most of them, your Partey's, your Odegaards, etc. Your Ben White's a great signing. I think Sambi Lokonga's a good deal. Nuno Tavares is a backup left back that we've needed. Willian and Runnison are going to be the two that are scrutinised heavily. But the contract, Smith Rowe, Tierney, Aubameyang, Holding, I mean, we look at back in hindsight with the Aubameyang deal, and we don't maybe think of it as a great bit of business. But at the time, it was let's be real, a lot of people, the majority, I think, of fans would have said they wanted Aubameyang to stay in that moment. So there is that to consider too. James says, would you even want Messi at Arsenal? I wouldn't. He's too expensive and probably on the decline, both football-wise and as a brand. I don't think as a brand he's declining in any sense of the word. Certainly in regards to his footballing ability, yes, but his brand is untouchable. Is kind of the pull of that. The shirts it would sell, the pull around the world that it would do, it commercially makes complete sense. The only reason why Barcelona are not, what we're left to kind of believe is the reason why they're not able to get Messi in, despite a contract being agreed, is because of the restrictions placed on them by La Liga. Has those restrictions not been there, Messi would certainly be a Barcelona player, and that's certainly something that maybe still will happen. There's part of me that even thinks he will end up still at Barcelona, so we'll wait and see on that one. Alfie says, nothing has changed in the windows. We still move slowly. However, he gets young players to sign deals. He's doing okay. In the chat box, I'm really interested around the kind of this point, and I'll put the question to you. Why is it you think Arsenal are slow, or perceived anyway as slow at transfers? Because I'm not sure about this kind of idea of being slow is a fact, because it all depends on our concept of when we hear about stories. The only way that we know that Arsenal are doing a deal is when the media reports it. And when the media report a deal, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the start of a negotiation. It doesn't mean that it's near the end of the negotiations. It doesn't even mean it's true necessarily. So the only concept we have of those deals being done is when they're reported to us and they leak through the media. So how can we have a perception that deals are done slowly? And if you think they are still done slowly, why? Why are they being done so slowly? SJ says, we seem to want to argue on every last penny in detail, yet for our side who are cautious in spending, we seem to constantly leak out our business to the point that every window there is some kind of saga. Let's address your first point, SJ. Wanting to argue every last detail. Would the club really be doing the right thing if they weren't trying to get the best possible deal for them? And you also have to factor in that there is another two parties at least in these negotiations. You've got the club that you're trying to buy from and the player. And the player's going to want a certain wage and the club's going to want a certain figure. So putting across the point of saying they're arguing about certain, just little indices of the deal, I'm not sure if it's about arguing. I think it's about trying to get the best possible deal so that Arsenal don't blow their budget on one player. And you've also got to think about how badly Arsenal have recruited in the past and about how we're trying to change that. We're trying to change that perception of how we deal with transfers in the market. And that's not going to be done by accepting small fees for our players or paying over the odds for players that we think aren't worth as much as we're paying right now. Ugang says, our critical failure last season was big player mistakes, lack of creativity, bad finishing, inability to play from the back and managing the press. How many of those do you think Edu has addressed till now? I mean, lack of creativity, finishing, inability to play from the back, these are all coaching things. So you do point this very much at Arteta. I think that with Edu's very much is all about the recruitment and he's about filling the gaps that we need. We needed a centre-back in 2020. We needed a central midfielder, and we got both of those positions. This summer, we need a lot more. We need another centre-mid, probably. We need an attacking midfielder. We may need a right-back. We need a backup goalkeeper. We needed a centre-back, it turned out. We needed a backup left-back, and we needed some depth in the midfield as well. He's done some of those, but there are some big gaps that we still definitely need to do. This is a travel. It's not a travel lodge. I'm not in a travel lodge, but it's a Holiday Inn tea, if you like, in Britain. It's very average indeed. That sounds so pretentious. It's a very average cup of tea. Vinny says he has an impossible job at present, selling players in a dead market. It will pick up towards the end of the window. Signings have been decent so far under Edu, and I will back him until he sells Willock, which, Vinny, could be very close to happening. So expect a big turnaround from our boy Vid in the chat. Definitely so. Some bloke says, I'll wager you follow any other club as closely as we do Arsenal, and you'd see some of the same criticisms regarding business not being done quick enough. I think there is a perception psychologically as well, if you consider the fact that we crave information. We crave wanting to know what the next move along the transfer window is. And tuning in for, say, I don't know, those guys that do 8 a.m. transfer shows every day, who are they? And when you follow news as daily and as regularly as we find ourselves doing, you're often going to find yourselves always thinking it's maybe moving slower than it actually is. And that's another thing that's probably slowing things down for us right now. Yeah, I'm on my onesie at the moment because the other half is with the is it the bridal group? Is that what they call it? It's a wedding we're going to tomorrow. So that's where the other half is right now. Yay, says, another question. Is Edu being handicapped by the fact that Arteta is the manager and not the first team coach, i.e. he has to overcompromise in squad building decisions? Now, I think that they wouldn't have, Edu was part of the process that promoted Arteta to manager. So if they didn't feel like they are on the same wavelength in regards to signings, I don't think they would have made that promotion. So I'm not sure if it's a handicap or if he's being hamstrung by Arteta's kind of vision about the squad, because you wouldn't keep a manager or a technical director whose visions weren't in sync, because if they weren't in sync, it's pointless. Like you need everyone at the club to have the same philosophy and buy into what ultimately they want to do. So I'm not sure if that is a legit argument to say why maybe it's not necessarily working. I think that they have to be in sync, and they wouldn't be here together if they weren't in sync, because it just wouldn't make sense to keep them on. Matt Thornton says, we as fans search new information every single day through the social medias and the internet. Bring back the days of you didn't know if you'd signed someone until it was on the paper, or teletext. I remember when there would, even I remember when teletext was a thing. I used to come home. I used to have a season ticket at the local club with my dad, and the only way that we ever knew any news of what the manager had said and stuff like that was in teletext and stuff. So yeah, news is so fast. It's changed so much now, and that's the situation that we find ourselves in, and we crave it absolutely. And now you have a very much younger generation, the generation before mine, who had just reaching adulthood or just in it. You're kind of your late teens, that kind of generation who have grown up with social media, grown up with this being the constant, incessant kind of continuous stream of news coming at you every single day. And I only really became kind of footballistically, is a better way of putting it, conscious in my late teens. I used to watch football and followed it and was very into it, but I wasn't kind of as in-depth ingrained in the tactics and in kind of the teams and knowing about European football till my late teens and university and that. So whereas now you're bombarded at such a young age with information of lots of different teams and coaches and managers, and you find out stuff in video games which you can educate people to, like the amount of clubs and teams and players there are. It can't educate you into how good those players are, but it can certainly tell you about those players, that's for sure, and the fact that they exist, etc. And countries and stuff like that is all through that kind of media. So there you go. Sheath King says, it is oxymoronic to suggest that an unprecedented Arteta transfer window can be achieved whilst relying on sales. We need to cough up to secure our targets, and KSE should foot the bill. I don't know. Oxymoronic would suggest that an unprecedented window happening under kind of restricted measures. It depends on the context, doesn't it? Because an unprecedented window for Arsenal isn't necessarily spending 150 million quid on transfers, because we've done that. Or we've done it a few times. We've spent between 100 and 150 million on transfers for a few seasons. Absolutely, we've done that in the past. So that's not uncommon for Arsenal in the last half decade at least. And for me anyway, an unprecedented window would be Arsenal making like a couple of world-class signings in one window. Arsenal have never really done that before. We've signed an Ozil in a window, Alexis Sanchez in a window. We've signed a Thomas Partey in a window. World-class players, but you never really see more than one. And Arsenal, I think, have got a world-class potential in Ben White, but not a world-class player yet. Maddison would be a world-class. I think he's up there being a top-class player. World-class is is tricky. I wouldn't think he was the same kind of level of signing as Mesut Ozil was when we signed him, but it would be a marquee signing, wouldn't it? And I think that Maddison would certainly be a marquee signing. Lautaro Martinez would be a marquee signing. And Max Aarons at right back, I think, would genuinely be a marquee signing. And Ben White is a marquee signing. And so if you put kind of 4 marquee signings into one window, I think that is certainly something that's unprecedented and something that's possible. I think that Arsenal could definitely go out and buy 3 marquee players in one window, 3 absolute upgrades on the current positions that we've got. And that would be unprecedented, and it would be under the current regime. So I don't think an unprecedented window is oxymoronic against the current state of the ownership. I think you could have an unprecedented window under these conditions. It would take a lot of money, and I think it would take a lot of player sales, which you do mention in your comment, of course. Oscar Jennings says, not pleased with how he sold players and not buying a creative midfielder last summer, but I like some transfers that he's done well with the young player contracts. This summer is make or break. Now, the selling thing is a tough one. And we're only going to be around for, say, 15 more minutes or so, because we've got to shoot out. But in regards to kind of Edu and selling players, I have sympathy. Edu's only been in full control of Arsenal for about, since Raul Sanllehi left. So the best part of a year, really, because when Raul Sanllehi left at the start of the summer window in 2020, that's when Edu kind of took full control. So the only real evidence we've got of an Edu selling is the current summer, January of 2021, and the summer of 2020. Now, in the summer of 2020, we weren't really able to sell anything. We sold Emi Martinez, which at the time for £17 million, I didn't really have too much of a problem with until I realised much later down the line how good he really is. But it was tricky to see that in just 12 performances. We've then gone into January and we've moved on a lot of deadwood. Now, I don't criticise the way that we did that. I thought it was a necessary evil, and I thought it was the only way that we were going to move those players off the wage bill in that January window. And so, therefore, I didn't have an issue of how Edu moved players on in that window whatsoever. This window, again, still very heavily affected by the pandemic. I don't think Edu's going to be capable of moving on players for them, what we would consider their actual value, because their market value is a lot less right now anyway than their actual value. And that's maybe one of the big reasons why we decided to extend Granit Xhaka's contract, because next summer it may be easier to sell and teams will have more money available to them because, of course, fans will be back in stadiums this season. But I don't think that you can turn around and say that he's been bad at selling when the context of the situation. I think he has handled some situations poorly, very poorly in regards to William Saliba, which obviously everything that happened at the end of the 2020 summer window, that is the big crux for me on Edu. That for me is the main reason, the main criticism that I have of Edu is how he handled the Saliba situation, how the club handled the Saliba situation. That is unequivocal. I can't argue against how that was handled. It wasn't handled in the right way. The other point which you brought up was doing well with the young players and the contracts. Yes, he has. Some of the transfers have been questionable, like Runarsson and Willian. But besides that, I can't really go for it. And if you are watching on playback, please make sure that you do leave a comment and explain why or why not you think he's done a good job. I want to see explanation. I want to see you telling me as to why you think what he's done is bad, because that for me is the biggest crux of this. Is it's all well and good saying, no, he's a terrible, terrible technical director, or he's a brilliant technical director. I want to know your reasons as to why. Tell me why you think those things. Adnan says, hey, Tom, we can only sign after selling some not for fees, but to accommodate new players, for example, the 50-seater bus, and we can only give to 50 and not 55 in regards to kind of the homegrown quota being 17 non-homegrown players. We've got to kind of move players on like Torreira, Kolasinac, etc. We've moved on a couple, but not really. Mavropanos was taking up a non-homegrown slot. We've moved him on. But we're also looking like we could sell some homegrown players like a Joe Willett, which, it's a shame because he would go, but then we may be bringing in kind of a Maddison that's already a homegrown as well. So that could be a like for like. But the homegrown situation is certainly something that is going to affect how we do business this summer. Adam says, for me, it's Saliba and Martinez. I knew he was better at the time. I mean, Martinez, I just can't. I can't look at the club and go, I can't have a go at them for selling Martinez. I just can't do it. It doesn't make, for me anyway, any sense to do that without the benefit of hindsight. No, it was impossible to know that was going to happen. 12 performances, I just can't. I regret it absolutely, and I wish we hadn't done it. But I'd say that with the benefit of hindsight. I don't say it knowing it would have been the wrong decision at the time. It's really easy to say now it was the wrong decision, but I just can't. I can't say that selling Martinez, a player that had been at the club for so long and not done a thing, and then in 12 games showed something, and we got a near £20 million offer. I completely get why we sold him, but I regret it absolutely based on the facts that we've been presented with since we let him go. So that's the thing, is that I can't have a go at Edu or the club for selling Martinez. I just can't. It doesn't make sense to me to do that. Some bloke says, story today is the quotes of Saliba saying that he didn't want a loan to another English team against the advice of the club. It doesn't speak well of him, in my view. It's one for another podcast, I think. But I do agree in the sense that that's a worrying sign that he wasn't in line with the club's kind of vision for him to go to an English club on loan this season. That is a worry for me, definitely. No Sleep says, Edu has been okay, but we're kind of in a new territory. It's hard to judge when you don't have a history of technical directors. And that's a good point. And the other thing is to say that if you don't think he's doing a good job right now, who comes in instead of him, and why would they do a better job? Because technical director is not head of football operations. It's not sporting director. It's technical director. Do you know what the technical director does differently to a sporting director? If the answer to that question is no, and yet you're suggesting people to take over from Edu, I don't know how you can come up with a legit suggestion without knowing what the job entails and what the difference is between that and, say, the job of Ralph Rangnick, or the job of Mark Overmars, or the job of Luis Campos. Like, unless you know the whole kind of roles around that job, how can you ever suggest who might be a better option for Arsenal in that role? We've got a head of football operations now in Richard Garlick, who's doing a lot of kind of the contractual stuff. We've got a CEO, effectively, like the Ivan Gazidis was in Vinay Venkatesham. And we've got this technical director in Edu, whose job is very much around players and recruitment. So it's really difficult to know. I mean, Adam, you say Mark Overmars all day long. Why would Mark Overmars do a better job than Edu right now? Why would he do a better job? What would he do differently to what Edu is doing now? And why would that bring us success? That's the answer I want to know. It's all well and good saying, yeah, let's throw out these names. I want to know why. I want to know why you think that. If we haven't got too much time to go through your answers, and so please do leave them in the comment sections. But if you think someone else would do a better job than Edu, tell me who that is and tell me why and what it is they would do differently to Edu right now. That's what I want to know. Tulip says, after this window, we can judge Edu properly. Till now, he's managed it at about a 6 out of 10. Signed Willian, but shifted on Mustafi and Ozil. Signed Partey and Erdegaard against Alex. But till now, seems progressive than the last ones. I'll try and make some sense of that, Chil. I think what you're saying is that you think he's done some good things in regards to kind of moving on certain players, and some things haven't gone so well in regards to kind of Willian. I think I would add in there also kind of the young players being signed up to new contracts. Edu is still very much involved in that, and his vision and philosophy along with Arteta's has to be sold to those young players to make them want to sign. So that's also going to be there. But the signings we've made on like Partey and Gabriel and Erdegaard on loan was a good bit of business. Ben White is a really good bit of business too. Sambi Lokonga is looking good as well. And Tavares is a backup left back that we needed. But yes, I do think there is a lot more judgment to come between now and the end of the summer window. That is definitely for sure. I'm trying to see if anyone has suggested a name. And that's the thing. MTV says Martinez has 23 appearances, not 12. Yeah, I was talking about that period at the end of the season when he kind of broke into the team after that Brighton game. So 23 appearances across his entire career, sure, but I'm talking about the period at the end of that season when we made a judgment on him. Michael says, if Edu don't sign Messi, he should be sacked on the spot. Yes, not so sure. Not so sure that's a realistic way of putting it. But I get your satire, that's for sure. Dave says it's not just Edu, it's the entire establishment, and that's another thing that I think that we would put in is that the ownership are here. The ownership set their parameters. Edu has kind of these, he's got these restrictions to work within. And what can he do within those? And why would anyone else come in with those same restrictions, be able to do the job that they're doing currently that's excited you so much in seeing them there? Leon says Edu seems naive and inexperienced. Now, that's great. You're throwing out words, but I need tangible explanation. Why is he naive? What has he done that's naive? What has he done that makes you feel he's inexperienced? That's what I want to know. Imperial says Edu is disgracing the invincible. I want to know why. Like, these are just words. They mean nothing. I need explanation as to your points. Yes, that's the issue here. King says one of the reasons why I think Edu is struggling to sell players, except the obvious reasons, are contacts in this modern era. A lot of transfers are done by contacts, and I think maybe he lacks that for now. I'm going to go for that W word again, but why? Because, he's managed to negotiate a deal with Real Madrid to bring Martin Odegaard in January. He's sorted out the deal for Ben White from Brighton, moving that through, going through the contacts and Anderlecht to get in. Sambi Lokonga with Benfica and Tavares. We've moved in players from Lille really well of late as well. He was involved. He was here when Pepe signed. I don't think he was very ingrained in that. And he was here very much when Gabriel signed as well. Arsenal have contacts. It's a club-to-club basis, and I think Edu will certainly have contacts. Maybe not as many of the likes as, Jorge Mendes is a super agent and stuff like that, but maybe not as much as some of the long-standing kind of recruitment people in world football. But I'm not sure that's something that would hold him back. Leon says, because he can't do deals, does bad deals like Willian. He doesn't buy well or sell well. But Leon, that's just not true, is it? But because, yes, Willian came in and Runnison came in. But we signed Partey. We've signed Ben White. We've signed Gabriel. We've signed Martin Odegaard. We've signed Matt Ryan. We've got Sambi Lokonga. I don't know what you mean by he can't do deals. That's just plainly not true. So I'm struggling to see how you think he's inexperienced, because we've clearly done deals. And he doesn't buy or sell well, again, not true. In the second half of last season, Partey was great. Odegaard was one of the big reasons why we improved so much last season. Had the second best form in the table since Boxing Day. He's managed to sign up these young guys to new contracts as well. And then if Emile Smith-Rowe wasn't here last season, we wouldn't have finished even in the top half, maybe. That's the situation that we find ourselves in now. So it's just not true. There's no point putting out facts that aren't facts. They're just words. And, it doesn't mean anything. Leon says it is true. No one would take Willian. Chelsea wanted to sign him up to a 2-year deal. So again, Leon, that's not true. Why can't we sell players like Granit Xhaka? Because there's a pandemic on. No Premier League club's going to come in for Granit Xhaka. The only team that was interested in publicly was Roma, and they were offering a fee that was below his actual value because of the pandemic and because Roma can't afford to add another player. They had to do so much business this summer, and they're not willing to pay more than what they're offering. There's a pandemic on, and people seem to kind of forget that right now. You're seeing the top players go for big money because they're the top players. Your Grealish, your Sancho, they're always going to go for that amount of money. But down this bottom end of the scale, you're not going to see it. You look at the clubs across the Premier League now, and especially the big six clubs and the players they've sold so far, it's very few. And especially to continental clubs. It's interesting that Atalanta now are going in for Tammy Abraham only because they've been able to make a lot of money from selling Christian Romero to Spurs. And so that's why they're able to spend that amount of money. But other clubs aren't that lucky because of the effects of the pandemic again. Anyway, we are going to wrap things up there. I have got to go now and pick up the bridal group for tomorrow's wedding. Not mine, I should stress. But we will revisit this topic, and I really want to get your thoughts and feelings in the comment section as well. If you've got an opinion, if you've got a view, if you've got something to say, throw it in the comment section. But please explain your points and try and use evidence if you can. Using claims with no backing doesn't really come to anything. So please do put evidence to your points in the comment section. Would love to hear your thoughts and feelings on whether or not Edu's done a good job or not. Other than that, it's been an absolute pleasure, guys, to speak to you as always. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for the transfer update show. See you later, guys. Have a good one. And as always, up the Arsenal.